Hello everyone, today we're covering the OE Challenger Decider match between Habu Yoshiharu and Ito Takumi. Ito was in a three-way playoff for his group. He was able to beat Fujimoto in the first round of that playoff and then Koga in the second round to decide that he's going to get to play Habu to see if he gets to challenge Fujii. And obviously, either of these would be amazing matchups. In the title match, Habu, the absolute legend, going for his 100th title ever. And then Ito, the only person to have beaten Fujii. He beat him twice. But both of those were in best of fives and 1 day matches, whereas the OE title match is a 2 day match and best of seven. So yeah, like super exciting match either way. Obviously, I'm rooting for Habu. I'm a Habu fan. And the game starts out, and Habu offers to play a bishop exchange with this move pawn to 7-6, which is a bold move. Ito is very, very well known for being super strong in bishop exchange, especially actually as Gote. It's actually the foil of Fujii, who loves playing bishop exchange as Sente. But actually, one of the reasons why Ito was able to beat Fujii in both of their title matches is that he's so strong in bishop exchange as Gote. So yeah, we get a pretty standard bishop exchange. And then Habu decides he wants to play aggressively, and he plays this move silver to 3-7, indicating he's going to play a Hayakurigin, which is usually a rapid attack. And interestingly enough, Ito decides he's going to mirror, and we get a Hayakurigin mirror. Not super common. Most of the time, someone wants to play reclining silver. But here, yeah, we're going to get a Hayakurigin mirror. So if you're not familiar with Hayakurigin, it's kind of like an in-between aggressive versus defensive. So the reclining silver is a bit more defensive. Bogeying, where you bring your silver here or even straight this way, is the most aggressive. And this is kind of an in-between because it still kind of helps defend the center while also being able to attack on the third file. So here, very common countermeasure against this is to let the silver get 3-5 and then sacrifice your rook pawn and then drop a pawn back on 8-5. So if you take the pawn, rook takes, and this would be a fork. So very, very common and is essentially the joseki against every Hayakurigin attack. So if you play this, you've faced this numerous times. I've seen this all the time. And so you can't take the pawn. So Habu proceeds by dropping the pawn on 3-4 first. You can also push this pawn and trade all the pieces off, but then you have to contend with this. This puts a lot more pressure. You can't really get rid of this pawn. Instead of retreating, Ito plays a bit more actively. He wants to trade off the silvers right away. Here Habu goes ahead, sacks the pawn off, and then takes the pawn back on the 8th file, right? So his silver isn't hanging anymore, so he can go ahead and take that pawn. Ito jumps the knight, and this is where things got really interesting. So the AI just wants to play pretty safe, take the pawn, retreat the rook, but Habu has other ideas. He wants to play bishop drop on 4-6. The engine doesn't love it, but it's a very aggressive move. He wants to take this pawn with check, and that's going to essentially enable his rook in for the most part. And again, the engine wants to kind of counter that by moving the king beforehand. He wants to play a prophylactic move. Either one of these things is okay. But Ito also wants to play very aggressive and active. He drops the pawn back on 5-4 with the idea that, hey, I can drop this silver here. Block your rook from coming in. But it's actually inviting this bishop takes on 2-4. And if you look at the eval here, there's actually only one correct move that maintains the advantage for Ito, which is king to 5-2. Very interestingly enough, if you were to play king to 6-2 instead, trying to get away from the attack, there's bishop sack on 5-1, and then after gold takes, you get your rook in. But it looks a little bit scary. I mean, you had to give up the bishop for a knight. Not a great trade. The only problem is this gold can't really move. If you try and run it away to safety, there's silver drop on 7-1, forking the king and the knight. And then if the king takes, this gold is hanging. So yeah, like the king to 6-2 would have been a mistake, primarily because of that line. That's why king to 5-2 is better. If you try and do the same thing now with this bishop sack after gold takes, rook takes, you don't have this silver drop anymore. So gold to 4-2 has this discovered attack on the dragon, while everything is solid here because the king defends the gold and there's no silver drop. So here, if you try and do something like dragon takes 1-1, then rook can take here, and yeah, you get this, and it's really hard to stop the rook from getting in. So instead, here, Habu plays a really nice move, the best move in the engine, which is gold back to 7-9. A really hard move to find. The idea here is if Ito decides to try and block the rook, which is kind of the point of this bishop drop, now you can actually bring the rook over to the 8th file and counterattack on this side of the board. And now since you have the bishop and the pawn here, you are now surrounding the king from both sides. So Ito doesn't do that. Instead, he decides he wants to play pawn drop to 3-7. An interesting move. If you take it, it looks like it's free. Now actually knight takes, and the rook is now too slow. So if you were to instead play the pawn over here, and the rook comes here, you can't take this pawn because knight to 9-7 now freezes the knight, or pins the knight. So Ito instead plays this move, and Habu goes all in basically here. Promotes the pawn, and the idea here is after knight takes, yep, bishop sack on 3-3, but you get to promote the rook with check, and you're forking some pieces. Gold back, and here, very interesting move. Habu doesn't take the lance, he plays dragon to 2-1. And the reason is if you actually take the lance, even though you're getting a piece, Ito gets to drop this silver back, and if you run to 2-1, gold back, so you actually, your dragon kind of gets trapped, and it becomes very inactive, especially if you run it to like 1-4 or something. So interestingly here, it's much better actually to keep the dragon on 2-1. Don't allow this silver drop, and now your dragon is actually super scary on this square. So Ito counters with pawn promotion sacrifice. Habu takes, and then bishop drop on 1-2, forking the dragon and this promotion. And this promotion looks super scary. It's right next to your king, but Habu sees through it. He takes the lance anyway, and after the promotion, now lance drop on 6-8. This was the best move by a lot. There are some moves, other moves you could consider like gold, but then the knight's going to get taken. So here Ito decides he's going to drop the silver and chase the king a bit first. But now you see that advantage that Ito had is completely gone. Habu's even the game back up. And the reason is, okay, like you can run this away, but now the silver is kind of in no man's land. And there's a decent amount of room to run up the board, potentially. So instead, Ito plays rook takes on 8-5. Now, you can see technically this is a mistake from the eval, but the idea is actually really hard to stop at first glance. The main idea actually isn't to like try and promote the rook to 8-7. The idea is actually to go rook to 3-5 and combine with this bishop to attack the king directly. And at first glance, obviously you want to take this horse, right? It's a free horse, but actually rook to 3-5 is super strong. And so if you want to stop rook to 3-5, you might think of a move, say like pawn drop 3-6. The problem with pawn drop 3-6 is horse back to 4-5, and now these two ponies, horses, whatever bishops that you want to call them, they're now combining for a gigantic attack on the king's head, and this is way too scary, and Habu didn't want this. So it turns out that Habu had a brilliant move here, which is pawn drop on 6-5. He did not end up finding this move. I actually haven't quite seen this type of move. So if you think about it, this lance is already skewering this horse to this silver, But what this pawn drop does is it blocks this bishop, it blocks the rook, and even the silver and the knight can potentially take it. And so if either of the bishop or rook take this, now it's clogging this up. And even like directly tactically, if you take with the rook because you still want to play pawn to 3-5, now if you just play pawn 3-6 and the horse tries to do that same attack, now there's a discovered attack on the rook, and you're going to lose the rook. So this would have been a brilliant find if Habu had found it, this pawn drop 6-5. Ito actually wouldn't have been able to take it with any of the 4 pieces. And instead the AI wants the best move, horse into 5-8. So this would have been just a beautiful move if Habu would have been able to find it. Instead, he does kind of the logical thing, which is, okay, let's take the free horse. But now rook to 3-5 is super scary. King has to run away. Pawn drop on 2-7. Gold takes. Rook gets to promote. And Habu's king looks like it's in a lot of trouble. And actually, it is in a lot of trouble. After king moves to 1-7, Ito here actually had a decisive move. You can look at the engine, and the engine eval doesn't quite see it because it is pretty hard sequence to find. But it starts with a bishop sacrifice on 2-7, and then after king takes, pawn drop on 2-6, and then a gold drop on 3-5. So it's a little bit hard to understand this sequence. I'm gonna go into a different variation starting from here, and you'll see why this pawn drop and then gold drop is so important. So you might think, okay, I can drop the gold immediately, and then after the king runs, take this, and this is a tsumero. But it turns out that in this position, you have bishop drop on 4-1. If you run to 5-1, we're going to get this discovered check. No good. So you're going to want to run to 6-2. But actually, this would be a mate after bishop takes. So yeah, even though you don't want to go here, you kind of have to. But this move, even though it's not mate, and you can say block you can block the rook with this pawn drop, this actually now can take the gold that's on 3-6. Yeah. So that's why you actually need to purposely sacrifice a gold so that you can drop the gold on 3-5, and this line doesn't work anymore. And actually, it's even deeper than that in a crazy way. I'm going to show the quick variation after the pawn drop if we try and do the same thing and why it doesn't work. Now if you try a bishop drop on 4-1, the king can actually run to 6-2 because this move is not made anymore. And the reason why is when the king starts running to this side of the board, the gold is closer to the king. Instead of being on 3-6, it's on 3-5. And so when you do things like, let's say, bishop drop here, and you try and run the king, now after dragon, when the king runs to 3-3, you can't drop anything on 3-4 and get the 1 gap because the gold is defending. So yeah, super deep move. Very difficult to see and understand all of that. And Ito did not find this. So instead, he takes the knight. Obviously, very direct threat. The problem with this move is that it gives Habu a tempo. He starts with this check, and then he blocks with the pawn. Now, it turns out that he could have just blocked with the pawn first, which would have been better. And the reason why blocking with the pawn immediately would have been better is because here Ito has the option to block with the gold, which wins a tempo on the bishop. When he blocks with the knight instead, Habu gets the turn again, that extra tempo that he needs to drop this pawn. Now, Ito tries to kick the bishop, but it's too late, actually. Silver drop on 4-1, forking the king and the gold. When the king runs, you can actually take the gold, and after taking the bishop, now this is a decisive advantage here. And Habu finds the best move in the position. Engine likes 6-6, but actually if you let it run much longer, it likes 8-6 better. They're obviously very, very similar moves, but it's actually important to play it on 8-6 to keep this influence of the lance. And this is actually a tsumero, starting with knight takes on 7-4. If you actually look, the king is very boxed in, and this take is extremely difficult to defend. The best move that the engine can find to do it is silver to 6-5, defending the pawn with the silver. Now here, You can see only one move to maintain the advantage, and it's Lance takes 6-5 is a pretty natural idea. The problem here, you can't take with the bishop because there's silver takes. And now it's a Tsumero again, and you've just taken this knight, which is an important attacking piece, and you can't take it with the bishop because now the bishop loses scope on 7-4, and you have this knight mate again. Whoops. Yeah, unfortunately, Habu plays the wrong move order. He starts with dragon to 2-2, and this is actually a gigantic threat, right? It's putting the dragon on line with the king, and now this silver to 4-3, huge threat, check, and I'm going to take the bishop. And if he gets that, he would win the game. But here, Ito, absolutely brilliant move sequence. He starts this brilliant sequence with bishop drop 3-5, dropping the bishop on top of the pawn. Now you can't take it because it would actually be a mate, like so. And this knight comes alive and wins the game for Ito. So you can't take this bishop. But hey, like you can just block, right? And Ito's out of pieces. He only has a pawn in hand. But here's the brilliance of this bishop 3-5 move. It combos into bishop sack on 1-3. Woo-hoo-hoo. This is a spicy move. Super spicy. So obviously the problem is it's a free bishop. But if you take it, now it kills your attack if you're Habu. It's not on this king's line anymore. You didn't take this silver when you could, so now this knight can't jump into 7-4 either. And here, Ito finds the winning move, knight drop to 3-5. Again, same idea. It's a Tsumero. You can't take it because then the bishop's going to come in, so Habu runs the gold. But then, boom, another bishop sack. If you take, it's mate. So here, there's actually no defense, and Habu had to resign the game. Oh man, I was watching at least the first half of this game live. It was super interesting. But and then when I was watching my own, the recaps that are in Japanese, I was super hyped when Habu had like the advantage here after silver to 6-5. And I couldn't really even see what was possible. And then I saw this bishop 3-5, bishop 1-3 sequence, and I was just like, whoa, okay, like, Ito, you earned it. You earned it finding those two moves. An absolutely crazy back and forth game. I think Ito beforehand was up a lot. He had a really good position, missed a couple moves. Then Habu had a couple good positions, missed a couple moves. And then at the very, very end, Ito finds the really nasty sequence, and so we're gonna get an Ito Fujii rematch, this time in a best of 7 2-day match, and we're gonna see what Ito can do, right? So he's been beating Fujii in these title matches, but they've been 1-day matches, and given how strong Fujii is in his calculation, he's just extra strong if he gets more time. So it's going to be super interesting to see what Ito can do. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.